What follows will be a series of reviews on Stonemaier Games. You'll already find reviews I've done on Tapestry and Viticulture, the latter being a rather comprehensive retrospective that some people took issue with. Anyway, next up on the list is Red Rising, based on a series of books most of you haven't heard of by novelist Pierce Brown. That's Dan Brown. That's Sandra Brown. Nice website. Eventually you'll get the right author. That's Chris Brown. That's also Chris Brown, but he's a friend of mine. That's Alton Brown. And wait. Whoa. That's weird. There you go. Pierce wrote a series of novels involving numerous multi-layered characters embroiled in a massive neo-imperial political tapestry, which is totally not Dune or Game of Thrones. What began as Red Rising was followed by Golden Sun and then Morning Star, concluding the first trilogy. Of course, that would not be the end of it, with Pierce starting a sequel trilogy beginning with Iron Gold, then Dark Age, with the final novel, Lightbringer, expected to be released in 2022. Red Rising begins hundreds of years in the future, set within our own solar system. An elite class of golds have created a color-based hierarchy on which they sit atop. Darrow, a red working on Mars, is given the chance to become a gold through a painful procedure in hopes of destroying the class structure from within. I know, you're screaming spoilers! But this is basically the impetus. He encounters such simplistically named characters as Cassius Bellona, Antonio Severus, Titus Ladros, and Pax Telemanus. I wonder what inspired those names. What follows is a series of pretzel-twisting crosses and double crosses as characters manipulate one another in a power grab. Is any of this necessary? I mean, the game certainly appears thematically tied, as every character is represented on a card, and there are a lot of cards in this game. A moment of praise must be levied to the art style as well. These cards look amazing. Before I jump into the details of the game, it's important to note that I have the Collector's Edition. I mean, if you could call it that, considering there's at least 15,000 of them. And also, nearly every review I have seen covers this edition. I think the basic edition might be the more difficult one to find. I had to steal this image from Stonemeier's own website. You can see the more expensive variant offers a better tray insert, gold cards which are embossed, and a metal sovereign token. Player tokens, including the cubes, are also metal. Though, good luck trying to differentiate the blue from the green, a complaint literally everyone has levied, and a problem I rarely actually encountered. A problem really only plagued by people bad at math who can't simply count how many cubes each player has left. Frankly, I'm more annoyed at these card stands, which you don't need and would appear useful until you cough. The game itself boasts a relatively small footprint, though an amazing number of cards, over 100 in fact. Players select one of these 6 house tiles representing the various colors in the game. Red for Mars, because of course it is, purple for Minerva, green for Diana, copper for Ceres, or is that gold? Yellow for Apollo, and blue for Jupiter. Jupiter and Mars are also represented on the board, along with Luna, which is also yellow, and the Institute, which is also green. Additionally, there is this wolf-shaped tray which holds the red helium crystals, and those will look familiar as I have at least 3 games with these same tokens. The gameplay is so entirely simplistic, and this is not a bad thing, that basically the entire game can be summarized on the reference card. A player will mostly follow the simple procedure of playing a card from their starting hand to 5 in one of the 4 spots on the board, and activating the deploy ability listed on it if desired. Then claim a card from one of the other 3 spots, add it to your hand, and activate the faction ability tied to that column. With Jupiter, advance the fleet track. Mars, gain a helium crystal. Luna, gain the sovereign token. Subsequently, activating your faction ability, and with the Institute, place an influence cube on the influence space. Everything gains points, and the moment at least 3 of these values meet 7, the game end is triggered. Additionally, if a player meets 2 values of at least 7, the end game also occurs. While these are basically quantity driven, most of the points come from a combination of specific cards in hand. Although you may be tempted to keep as many starting cards given their points, you may discover your strategy in game lacking if you keep recycling 1 or 2 cards. The objective is to create a combination with these cards as long as you don't have more than 7, where you triggered these bottom card bonuses. No lie, the vast majority of points in-game will be scored by the cards in your hand and not the values scored on the board. The game may be simplistic, but that is because most of the rules can be found on cards themselves, and remember, there are over 110 of these, and they are each different. Alas, this also creates issues with randomness, and some players may be gifted with better cards than others. Likewise, these class factions possess asymmetrical powers, and as we've learned in Tapestry, these are seldom balanced. Red Rising is no exception. Apollo always goes first as well as last, meaning it gains an additional turn. Ceres gains an additional card, but must banish one at the end of the game. All players can activate an ability based on if they retain or claim the sovereign token, and the abilities tied to these two factions are junk. However, Jupiter advances on the fleet track, Diana adds a cube to the influence track, and Mars gets helium. Influence can score way more points than helium, and Jupiter can also score high points, depending on how far one advances. Minerva gets to roll the rising die and gain its benefit, except 2 results are basically pointless. Even after one game, it became clear the factions felt unbalanced. At some point, faction spaces will be empty, and if you don't want to claim a card, then you draw from the top of the draw deck and roll the rising die to gain a random benefit. This will eventually happen as cards will empty out of this board. There is another alternate action instead of the primary, I spent nearly 500 words explaining, which should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. You can reveal the top card of the deck, place that card, and gain that location's bonus. Ultimately, beyond the initial issues revolving randomness, my biggest problem with Red Rising is something few people mention: the lack of accomplishment. One thing I appreciate with Stonemaier Games is that win or lose, you gain a sense of achievement. You've built a winery or a civilization. With Red Rising, I felt no success or triumph if I won or lost. Despite having crafted a hand of cards equating points, most of the cards didn't feel special, and the totality of it felt lacking. I didn't build a mine or create a fleet. I only moved some tokens and possessed a hand of cards unique to me. Additionally, I didn't appreciate the number of take-that cards in a game where it felt unwelcome. The need to read the cards in your hand as well as those on the board will certainly lead to analysis paralysis, which can be a huge issue in high player count games. The cards are unbalanced, with some incredibly overpowered. The game runs for 6 players, but I can only imagine the nightmare that would be. Such a situation would certainly create an environment similar to Tapestry, where the point spread between first and last is gargantuan. Red Rising looks stunning, and unlike Viticulture and Scythe, acts as a middleweight game that can be played in under 30 minutes with 2 players. However, as a result, it fails as a quick game and is not complex enough to be a long evening occupier. And although I don't expect this from a game, as an adaptation, someone playing Red Rising would get little information on how the books actually read. My suggestion is that reading the books may lead to a more satisfying experience, and that the basic box would be the better value, as not much is gained by the collector's edition. Finally, there's this. Thankfully, Jamie Stegmaier himself has outright admitted, and rightfully so, that the Red Rising board game does not necessarily include the race or class structure allegories as gameplay mechanics. The cautionary aspects of the book is not present in the game because doing so would be very, very, very bad. The game simply features abstract versions of a number of characters and archetypes found in the world of Red Rising. Good idea. I will rate Red Rising a 7.5 out of 10, given several additional points for production value and speed of play. It's not a bad game by any respect, and I feel I would bring it to the table again, but it's certainly not the strongest title in Stonemaier's library. This has been Chris of Deus Ex Machina.